The basic structure of the system is ready. Now it's time to make it more convenient and visually appealing. In this lesson, we'll focus on improving usability and adding mechanisms to start and stop sessions with a single click. At this point, we already have a database where we can log work sessions or other activities, including start and end times, additional information, and connections to tasks. But doing all of this manually is, of course, not very convenient. The information we need to enter is often contextual. We can extract it from the current situation. When we begin working on something, we want that exact moment to be saved into the start column. The same goes for the end. Usually the task already exists in Notion. We are just starting to work on it. So ideally, that task should automatically appear in the session's task relation. And of course, the person field should contain the person who created the session. Why not populate that automatically? This is a perfect use case for adding buttons. Buttons are one of the most powerful tools in Notion. They stand alongside databases and relations as essential components. If you want to confidently use Notion, you need to understand how buttons work. Now we'll add the first button to our system. Buttons in Notion can be added in two ways, either as a standalone block or as a column inside a database. We'll use both approaches, but let's start with a standalone button block. Let's add it to the top of the page. Type a / to bring up the list of available blocks, then type button. The button is created. Let's name it Start the Timer. We'll change the icon to something more appropriate. Now we configured the button's behavior. We wanted to create a new entry in the TimeLog database and pre-fill all the fields that we already know. To do this, we select the second option, Add Page to, and then choose the TimeLog database. Let's give it a name, Work Session. What can we pre-fill? The start time. We choose the time-triggered option. This means that the moment you click the button will be saved in the start field. Then we set the status to active and select the person as the one who clicked the button. What fields are left empty? End. But that's fine, the session just started. Also the task. That's totally reasonable. Notion doesn't know which task you're working on when you click the button. Later we'll create a smart button that links the session to the correct task. But this standalone button, created as a separate block, is useful in cases where there's no task yet, or you need to start quickly and link it later. So we've filled in everything we could, and we leave the task and end empty. Let's test how the button works. I click Start the Timer. A new session is created. Awesome! What else can we add? Well, if you start a new session, you probably want the previous one to automatically stop. Although from experience it varies, some people prefer to stop sessions manually. But if you do want sessions to auto-end, let's add another step. And it needs to run before the new session is added. So now we'll add this step and move it to the top. This step will edit existing sessions. We choose the third option, Edit Page In. Let's drag this step to the top. Now we select where we want to edit pages. In the TimeLog database. Currently, the filter is not configured, so it would try to edit all records. We need to narrow it down to only edit the ones we want. Which sessions are we targeting? The ones created by us and still marked as active, meaning they haven't been completed yet. Set the person to me. Add another condition. Make sure it says end and choose status equals active. Thanks to this filter, the button will only update entries that meet these conditions. Usually it will be just one record. What do we do with it? We set the end time to the moment the button was clicked and update the status to completed. Let's test the button. I already have one active session. Let's give it a name. I click Start the timer. Everything works as expected. The previous session was closed and a new one was created. Now, at the end of the day, you'll probably want a button that stops your session without starting a new one. So let's add another button that simply stops all your active sessions. We can cheat a little here. Just duplicate the button we just created and remove the second step, the one that adds a new session. We leave only the step that edits existing sessions. Let's rename the button to Stop the Timer. We'll pick a more fitting emoji, maybe a square. It could also be something like a pause symbol. Let's test this one too. I click Stop the Timer, the session is ended. Great. Let's start organizing our dashboard. Move the time log block to the right side of the buttons. Let's add a heading, something like Actions. Let's change it to the largest available size. Under the section title, you can add a divider. Just type 3 hyphens in a row or choose the divider block. For now, let's reduce the column widths in the time log so we can see more of the table data. Later, we'll remove this table view from here entirely, but I'm keeping it for now so we can easily watch how the records change when we press the buttons we're working on in this lesson. Now we'll add a button that not only creates a session, but also links it to a specific task. This is exactly what buttons inside the tasks database are good for, so Notion can understand the context. Let's add a new column of type button. Name it Start the Timer. The button configuration interface looks exactly like it did in the standalone block, and we're doing the same steps. First, we want to stop any existing session that we started earlier. So we choose Edit Pages In and pick the time log database. Again, we set the filter, set person equals me, and status equals active. Check that the logic operator says and the filter is configured. Now we set the end time and status equals completed. Next, we create a new session, choose Add Page To, and select the time log database. Start equals time of click. Person equals who clicked. Status equals active. And now we can dynamically link the task. Use the special variable. This page, it will be replaced based on which task you clicked the button on. We can also pull the title from the task so the session has the same title as the task. To do that, choose Edit as Formula, select this page, type a dot to access the list of properties, and find the one that stores the task title. Mine is stored in the task column. Yours might be different. Save and save again. Let's test it. I'll freeze the title column so we can see it better. Now I choose the Task Update homepage layout and click Start the Timer. A new session was created with the name Update Homepage Layout. The start is set, the status is correct, the person is me, and it's linked to the task. Perfect, everything works. Let's check if the previous session ends upon starting a new timer. I'll start Fix Footer Links. Update Homepage Layout is now completed, and Fix Footer Links is active. Let's move on. We already have a standalone button called Stop the Timer. Now the question is, should we add the same kind of button for individual tasks? Technically, we can do that, but in my systems, I usually don't add it. The reason is simple. Due to Notion's current limitations, this button can be configured to stop only the sessions related to the task you're clicking on. No matter which task you click Stop the Timer on, all of your active sessions will be stopped. That creates confusion. It's not the kind of intuitive behavior users would expect. Still, I'll show you how such a button would behave by temporarily adding it to the tasks database. You don't need to follow along, I'll delete it afterward. So, I create a new button called Stop the Timer. And what do we want this button to do? We want it to edit pages in the timelog database. We set the filter, as usual, status is active and person is me. And I would love to be able to dynamically filter by task too. Remember how we used this page reference when configuring the Start the Timer button? Well, here that option isn't available. Not for filters, it's probably a technical limitation of Notion. We can only use a static task reference, which doesn't work for us. So we leave the filter with just status and person, and we set the end time and update the status to completed. Now here's the issue. Let's say I have an active session linked to the task Fix Footer Links. If I click Stop the Timer on this task, everything's fine. But if I click Stop the Timer on some other task, like Update Homepage Layout, that session still gets stopped. So again, this behavior isn't intuitive. Let's launch a new timer now. And when we go back to the timelog database, we can see that even with just a few entries, the active session already gets lost in the list. That's not convenient. Let's make this better by creating a dedicated space where we can see just our active session, not in a table but in card view. And now we'll unlock another bit of Notion magic, the ability to show database content in different parts of your workspace. We'll add a view of our time log somewhere else, specifically showing only the active session. To do that, we use the linked view of database block. I type /linked and choose linked view of database. I select our time log database. Now it appears here too. Notice the little arrow next to the database title. That's how you know this is a linked view. The original database doesn't have that arrow. This is important. If I delete the original database, I delete everything inside it. Let's undo that. But if I delete the linked view, nothing bad happens. That's why later we'll store all the original databases in a separate place that we never touch. And we'll build our dashboards using only linked views. Another way to create a linked view is to just copy an existing one. Right-click, copy link to view, paste it, and select linked database view. Same result. Now let's configure this view. First, I want to change the layout from table to gallery. Then I turn off card preview. Since my session entries don't contain images or text that needs previewing, I also reduce the card size to small. Next, I go to Properties and make sure the status is visible on the card. Right now, we're seeing all the sessions. This is the same information we see in the main table, just displayed as cards. The start, end, and other columns are hidden here. We only see the name and status. All the other information is still available inside the card. So, Let's go to the filter settings. We want to see only entries where status is active. Let's take it one step further. Transform the filter into advanced and add a second condition. Person is me. Now we're showing only our active session. Let's rename the view to something like active or current timer. And above the block, I'll add a section header called timer with a divider underneath. Also, let's hide the database title. We can always show it again from the view settings. One tip: when the database name is hidden, it's harder to tell if you're working with a linked view or the original database. That's why I recommend keeping originals somewhere safe and always building with linked views. Another way to check if it's the original database, you'll only see the layout option in the settings. If it's a linked view, you'll see source as well, meaning you can switch to another source database anytime. Now, I suggest adding the Stop the Timer button directly to the card as well. Here, on the main dashboard, this button might not be that useful because you can achieve the same thing with the button we already added to the list of actions. However, if your list of actions becomes longer, it might actually be easier to simply glance at the card. You don't even need to open it, and click the button directly on the card. Later, this button will come in handy when we add a sessions table inside individual tasks. But that's for later. For now, let's just add this button to the card. As before, we can add it in the main database by creating a new column. You can also do this directly from the record page. Just open any record and click Add Property. Choose button and name it Stop the Timer. This time the behavior is simple. We just want to edit this session. So we choose Edit Property, and inside that we update the end time to now and status to completed. Make the button visible. Let's test it. Works perfectly. The session is now marked as completed. Let's start a new timer. You'll see the new session immediately appear in the active section. But now I want to see how much time has passed since this session started. Let's make the necessary column visible on the card. This is the time spent column, but as you can see, nothing has changed. That means this column is currently empty. Let's open the card. Yes, it's indeed empty. And it's empty because it depends on another property, spent minutes, and that property is also empty. Why is it empty? Because we don't have the end time for the session, only the start time. So we can't calculate how many minutes have passed between the two. Now I'll change the formula in a way that if the end time hasn't been set, the time will be calculated from the start time up to the current moment. If you copied the ready-made formula, you probably already have this change. But if you were writing it manually by following me, you'll need to update how the formula works now. So what are we going to do? Here's the logic. If end is empty, use now. Otherwise, use end. So this whole construction consists of three parts: before the question mark, between the question mark and the colon, and after the colon. The first part is the condition. If it's true, then we go into this part and skip the other. If the condition is false, meaning the end time is not empty, then we ignore this part and execute the part after the colon. Basically, it's the equivalent of an if function, just in a more compact form. We save the formula, and now we see that 3 minutes have passed since the session began. This value is also shown directly on the card. We might move the time spent field a bit higher. We can even hide the status field because everything in this view is by definition active. One final thing to know, this timer value doesn't auto-update in real time. You'll see the new value after refreshing the page. So if you've been working in another tab for an hour and come back, it will still say 3 minutes until you refresh. That's how Notion's formulas work. And just like that, starting and stopping timers has become much easier. In the next lesson, we'll go inside task and project cards, display sessions there, and explore another powerful property type, the roll-up.